Hello and welcome to From Panels to Pictures. This is the TV and movie review show from the Comic Crush. Welcome back to all you guys. This is episode 3. You'll remember our last show we had Nikki on to discuss Wonder Woman 1984. This week we're joined by Keith Isles from Home Media Minefield. Hi Keith.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
Thanks
good.
for having me.
No, I'm really pleased to have you back on. I've been looking for a chance to get you back on for a while. And you actually suggested this, so I'm really pleased to have the chance to take you up on your kind offer of coming back on. We're going to do something a bit different today that we don't normally do, which is we're going to talk about the trailers for a particular show as opposed to the show itself. Because, of course, we haven't seen the show itself yet. It's not available anywhere. And, in fact, we haven't got a UK date. Oh, sorry, I'll just move there. So we're going to talk about the first 2 trailers that have popped up for Superman and Lois, which is the new CW show set in the Arrowverse, which I know one of us is a huge fan of.
Wow. I used to be. I'm very behind on the Arrowverse, and I think I was on one of your podcasts where we discussed the pilot episode of Batwoman, which would have obviously been, over a year ago now or whatever. And, we talked briefly about a bit of the history of CW's Arrowverse. I know that this is set in it. This iteration of Superman was actually introduced in the Supergirl TV show, which is part of that Arrowverse. But in terms of timeline and where this is and the fact that it's contemporary and all this, I think these events are because of what happened in their adaptation of Crisis on Infinite Earths, which they did as a sort of 5-episode crossover event with all of the shows within that universe.
I will say we did cover, however, because of various technical difficulties and scheduling problems at my end, that episode never actually saw the light of day. I will try and dig it back out and get it up at some point. But yeah, I mean, what interests me about this is, first of all, the Supergirl universe of Arrowverse, if you like, is actually a different universe from the Arrow universe. Isn't it like an alternate dimension, which is one of the kind of many confusing things. I'm not sure why they chose to do that initially. I don't know enough about the shows to really speak to that.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that. I mean, obviously this whole multiverse thing is very vogue now, because obviously they did this with these shows, and obviously it looked like Marvel might be doing this as well with some of their MCU stuff now. But basically the reason that Supergirl initially wasn't in the main Arrowverse universe, to my knowledge, and I may be wrong with this, but I believe it was to do with the television networks that it was on, because originally one of them was on CBS and the other was on the CW, and they were owned by different parent companies. And even though the producers were the same, it was Greg Berlanti and his team of producers that developed it. But I think there was some reason, because of the different networks, they couldn't do crossovers, and eventually they got permission to do certain crossovers. So you had Flash appearing in Supergirl, bearing in mind Flash is the one, my limited comic knowledge, he's the one that could go through the multiverses anyway because of his speed and Flashpoint and all that sort of stuff. And then what happened is, eventually, for its, I think, 2nd or 3rd season, Supergirl ended up on the CW anyway. But as I said, I think they tried to keep it separate so there wasn't confusion about, well, hold on, if Arrow and Flash have this big problem and they're trying to save the universe, why isn't Supergirl involved? Which she was eventually, but initially, I think that's why they made them as two different universes, which I believe is in line with the comics anyway. You'll be able to answer that better than me in terms of the comic.
I don't think it is.
Oh, okay.
Although increasingly the universe is becoming increasingly fractured, and there's a lot of change going on there. It's very hard to keep up unless you're kind of reading everything, which is a no-no for me. I won't be reading every single DC comic or every single Marvel comic that comes out.
Why on earth not?
It's so weird, Keith. Running a comics website gives you absolutely zero time to read comics.
I hear you. And well, put it this way, I couldn't keep up with all the shows, which is why I ended up. I think I lasted sort of 6 seasons of Arrow, which I think actually ran up to maybe 8 or 9 seasons.
I think it was 8, yeah.
Yeah, I did 3 seasons of Flash, which ran concurrently. I didn't really get into Legends of Tomorrow, which was another one. Then there was Supergirl, which I definitely saw the first 2, maybe 3 seasons of. And of course, since there's been Batwoman, which has gone through all sorts of, behind the scenes problems. and now this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't, partly because they're on Sky, so I'm seeing them much later on things like Now TV and in fact, Arrow, I think, was on Amazon Prime for a while. So I've caught up with some of it there. I would like to kind of continue going through it, but I think it's one of those things, it flashes back to how television used to be pre-streaming.
Yes.
Which was television was something you listened to while you did other things. It wasn't something you watched. It was, in a way... It kind of became the modern radio at the time, whereas now I find you do have to pay more attention to the shows, like the streaming shows, because of their length, partly, like 10, 12, 8 episodes, whatever. You're kind of forced into a very narrow space to kind of make sure you've paid attention to what's happening in each episode. It's something that kind of HBO pioneered. I think I would prefer shows to be more like that, because I think these shows would be a lot more kind of digestible if they were in that format, no more than 12 episodes. But that's something we can talk about as we move on.
Well, no, I mean, certainly with the Arrowverse, one of the problems was, you had 5 or 6 shows running concurrently. With a series run of between 20 and 22 episodes per season as well. So that was a lot to cover. So as you can imagine, it got quite convoluted. It also did get a bit silly, I have to say, tonally. This all became a bit more ridiculous the more fantastical it got, which, was understandable. And, it did sort of change, I think, as the sort of, entertainment landscape and the some of the views around that changed. That sort of fed into the series as well, and I kind of I'll be honest, I kind of tuned out, although I did think that the Crisis on Infinite Earth was a a mammoth television experiment. I'm not sure it was entirely successful, but it was nonetheless entertaining. And wow, what a lot of moving parts, So
yeah, I think what was the one that I really liked that we did talk about? Was it Elseworlds?
Oh, was it Invasion or Elseworlds? Because they've done several of these.
I think they kind of hit a high point when they did the one where Supergirl is the sort of militaristic, they're sort of like the Nazis from the future, or
I believe that one was Elseworlds. Yeah, which was like a 4-part. It crossed over with, there were 4 shows at the time, and it was about maybe 3 years ago that one was out, and that was very good actually. It was kind of
hit a high point there.
Yes, yes.
Largely because they didn't feel the need to tie those into the ongoing stories of the shows they sprang from, which I actually found confusing in watching those things on their own.
I stand corrected, by the way. I've just realized, I think that was Crisis on Earth X. Not
Yes.
Elseworlds was the one that introduced Batwoman before the series.
Correct.
It was the previous one, Crisis on Earth X, which was the Nazi kind of mirror universe version of Arrow and Supergirl, etc. Yes.
Yeah. Like it was a great few episodes. I really enjoyed it. Now,
of course, these had Superman in them as well.
Yeah. He pops up in several of these. So Superman, we've got Superman played by Tyler Hoechlin, and if I'm saying that right, I hope I am, and Lois Lane played by Elizabeth Tulloch. I feel like they've resurrected Margot Kidder every time I look at Elizabeth Tulloch. And I'm sure to a certain degree this was why she was chosen. And I'm not, denigrating any of her acting or her abilities, but I think they kind of are trying to hit touchstones. And in a way, it's quite smart to stop doing it with Superman. Stop trying to find people that look like Christopher Reeve. And just go, actually, maybe we can do it this way, which I like. I'm all for that. Looking at this show, which I've got to say, I'm not even sure I knew was coming until the first trailer popped up. What struck me was what a different tone it seems to have from the rest of the Arrowverse shows.
No, agreed. I mean, the first thing that struck me when I saw the original trailer, the first version, was I was thinking, they've kind of taken Smallville and turned it on its head. Meaning that with Smallville, which I was a massive fan of, obviously that's a generation ago now, which is scary. But with Smallville, you sort of had teenage Clark Kent and the characters around him, Lana Lang, Pete Ross, etc. And it was Clark sort of dealing with this superpower, and his parents sort of dealing, going to his parents for advice on who to be and how to be and all of it and how to deal with it. Whereas in this, it looks like it's sort of the inverse of that, because Lois and Clark are actually the parents, and it's how their teenagers are dealing with them, or with him being the superhero, as it were. So I think I think this could be. We've had lots of iterations of Superman over the years, even in the last decade. And I think that this has the potential to be quite an interesting viewpoint on the whole thing.
Yeah, actually, I didn't think of that. It does, as you say, turn Smallville on its head by simply generation swapping the leads with the B characters, the children. Which is a fascinating take. I mean, I was never a huge fan of Smallville. I liked I liked. There were certain episodes I liked and certain things about it I liked, but again, just even back then, I couldn't deal with 22 episode runs. The same thing every week,
and it ran for 10 seasons as well. Smallville, broke a record at the time.
Again, one day when I'm retired, I'll maybe sit back and rewatch all these things. But it really wasn't for me. I think I tuned out around about season 4, season 5, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't remember for the life of me what was going on. But
funny enough, it did actually change, because the original producers, Alfred Goff and Miles Miller, who were the developers of that show, and basically, chose to they did this whole no flights, no tights policy, and chose to not deal with the disguise and, all of that sort of hokey stuff, and tried to make it sort of more grounded in inverted commas. They were only on board, you see, for the first 7 seasons, because that was how long they expected it to run. And after that point, Michael Rosenbaum left as Lex Luthor, because I guess he'd been tired of spending 7 years being bald and probably wanted to grow his hair out, having his head shaved for 7 years.
It was actually my favorite character in the show.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And they all went. So then at that point, interestingly, the show did turn into more of what the Arrowverse is, because at that point it became a costume show, which it never was before, and you know, with aliases and you know, all of that, and more DC characters coming into it. In fact, we had a version of Arrow's Oliver Queen actually in the Smallville series. And you know, that sort of thing. So it did become a different thing, and maybe it outstayed its welcome a little bit, but I have to say I've got a bit of a special place.
I'm not knocking if you like it, it's your thing, great, you know. And it's not to say that I won't ever go back and look at it and go, oh, actually, I'm completely wrong about this, and as I often do about things, and completely wrong about this. I actually do like it. But you know, moving on to this, the tone seems much more in line, weirdly enough, ever so slightly, with Man of Steel, which I was quite surprised at. Which is things are kind of shot through with a very diffuse sunlight. You know, it's got that kind of Midwest farmland pastoral feel, I would say, kind of you'd see in things like Terrence Malick, and you know, I doubt it's going to reach the lofty heights of Terrence Malick for people, but it doesn't need to, though. It doesn't need to. It's not that type of show. But I think they really seem to be going for something with this, and there really seems to be a different angle. I mean, we know from the first trailer that Intergang and Morgan Edge are probably going to be factors in the show. They were characters from the original comics, very, very present in the sort of late 80s and 90s in Superman comics. Although I will confess to not having read too much of the Intergang stuff in the comics. I've read some 80s stuff. There is one run of Superman comics called Exile, which was out sort of really on in my comic buying life, if you like. And I remember buying that, every bit. I had every single issue of that. It was spread all over the Superman issues and a few other things besides. And it's one where Superman accidentally kills General Zod and his sort of cohort. Not accidentally, he actually kills them on purpose, sorry. And dealing with the guilt of that, he exiles himself off to space and goes on this crazy adventure where he learns more about the history of Krypton, and he becomes this sort of nomadic space character. Now that storyline, I have brought those comics and sold them 3 or 4 times. Because every now and then I get this nostalgic pang where I go, oh, that was a really good story. That was a really good story. I loved that. And I will go and I'll find it, or it will pop up in some back issue store, and I'll be like, oh, I'll just give it another read. I'll just give it another read. I've now stopped doing that because I've got the big hardcover omnibus. So hopefully that'll cure me of ever having to go and buy that thing again.
I hear you. Yeah.
But Intergang and Morgan Edge do pop up in that storyline over the course of those
and I believe, I might be wrong about this, but I believe they have, those characters have also been in the Arrowverse. Only I believe there's been some recasting going on for this, which I guess if you say it's another part of the multiverse, that's a way they can get away with recasting without it being a massive continuity thing. But no, I agree with you absolutely. What you were saying about the aesthetically, the look of this is much more Man of Steel. You know, where Smallville, even though it was quite grounded, it was still very colorful. It still dealt very much in primary colors. You know, Clark was always wearing red and blue, you know, bright red and blue, regardless, you know, even though it was normal clothing like T-shirts or jackets or check shirts or whatever. It was still quite a colorful show. Whereas this, you know, has much more of that, you know, darker, washed out look that Man of Steel has. Also, I get the feeling that this, which is again quite different to the other Arrowverse shows, but this is really going to, I think, potentially, from looking at the trailer, deal with family issues, and you know, that's going to be sort of, rather than being sort of super villain of the week or whatever, it's going to, you know, it's going to be more about, I think, that family dynamic and those issues there. So I think it has the potential to be, you know, quite intriguing from that point of view. Yeah.
And I think you are going to get the sort of soap opera element almost, because comics are just a big soap opera, really. But they're just done in really bizarre costumes. And I think there's definitely going to be a sense, as you say, of kind of grounding the whole thing, which I don't think will hurt. Because I find looking at the Arrow shows, one of the things that puts me off is the same thing that puts me off about all network television. It's just like, regardless of how dark this scene's supposed to be thematically or aesthetically, we're just going to whack the brightness up for you. And there you go. Don't worry. You'll just get every inch of this thing. And everything just kind of looks the same. You know, I have a real issue with that. Because that just, the look of that sort of television drives me mad. And I'm just, because it just looks cheap.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of flatly lit,
you know,
bright. It's flatly lit and brightly coloured and all of this sort of thing. And this look more filmic. I mean, from the trailer, I'm not sure if the show's actually going to be like this, but from the trailer, they even had it in a sort of 2:35:1 aspect ratio.
Yeah,
you know, like one of the Superman movies. But by the way, we're still dealing with this though. You recognize me as the person? Am I a different person? Because that did sort of make me laugh in the trailer.
There was that sort of meme that went around for years of Zoe Deschanel, and it was Zoe Deschanel not wearing glasses, but having her hair sort of swept back, you know, away, you know, no bangs, no fringe, and someone just went, I can actually completely see how Superman gets away with it now, because it's just that. But I think that's just one of the great things, is that I think part of the point of Superman is that he carries the Clark Kent. You know, it's always that thing of Superman is not the real identity. Clark Kent is the guy, and Superman is just the secret. You know,
depending on the iteration. Yes, you know, there were iterations where the character was absolutely Clark Kent, and you know, Smallville obviously played totally into this, and you know, he became, I mean, he didn't even know who Superman was through most of Smallville, but you know, by the end becomes Superman. But there were also versions where, I mean, arguably one could say that with Christopher Reeve, who I love, you know, who we grew up with, that's our Superman, right? But he was Superman, and then he would almost kind of put on a disguise as Clark Kent, because of his characterization of Clark Kent, making him this kind of bumbling buffoon, you know, awkward kind of person. And it is, you do sort of think, well, where does one end and the other begin, right? So it's interesting.
Interesting enough, in the comics, I think last year, one of the storylines I did really enjoy, that there was a long-running thing where Lois Lane, who is married to Clark Kent, you know, canonically in the comics, was seen kissing Superman.
Right.
And that had become like a big press issue. And, you know, of course, Clark Kent was trying to figure a way through, you know, how does he get the attention off his wife? And it sort of carried through into the Lois Lane maxi series that came out, which was fantastic. And it carried through into the Superman comics by Brian Michael Bendis. And the way they handled it was wonderful, because Superman actually just went, right, I'm Clark Kent. I'm really Clark Kent, and he let everyone know who he really was.
Like the Iron Man moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was great because one of the things that has always been present in the DC universe is secret identities.
Yes.
Like they're always kind of present, and they're always necessary. As much as secret identities are completely useless to the Marvel universe, they are ingrained in the DC universe and necessary.
Yeah.
And it's one of the key differences between the two. And it was great to kind of see that. And I actually, one of the first articles I wrote for the Comic Crush was an article on should they reveal the identity? I'm not sure they should. Blah, 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 blah. I was happy to be proven wrong because the comics handled it really well.
Right.
So it's interesting to see. And now we have in the trailer number 2, he reveals his identity to his children.
Yeah, who are totally surprised.
Yeah.
that was why I did the glasses thing, because I was like, seriously? But in fact, on the subject of glasses, actually, again, I always sort of notice these things, but I've noticed they've kind of gone with the Dean Cain style glasses for him, the ones like in Lois and Clark, which I suppose is another kind of, this is sort of Smallville meets Lois and Clark, isn't it, in some respects? I don't know whether you ever saw that show in the 90s,
you know what? I love Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
I really loved it. Dick Lane and Terry Hatcher, as you rightly point out. The thing that I found ruined that show, and someone did a whole article on this back in the day, and they were spot on, which was the show used to have in the first season what they called URST, unresolved sexual tension.
Yeah.
But the moment they started dating, that went out the window, and slowly the kind of show, you could see this sort of graph where the show started to kind of and they really should have kept it will they, won't they,
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, particularly in the first season, they had an excellent love triangle with Lois, Clark, and Lex. And again, I would argue he was quite a good Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor was played by an actor called John Shea, who rather than being sort of much older than Clark and bald and all of this sort of stuff, he was actually a bit more of kind of a leading man type himself, and a bit of a sort of foil for that. And there was some attraction with him and Lois, Terry Hatcher and him in this, which obviously caused Clark, the man Clark, because again it followed that one, some jealousy and something he had to deal with, and that worked quite nicely in that first season of Lois and Clark. But like you said, second season, Lex left, he was gone. I think he came back and they got together, and you're right, it absolutely lost its it lost the unique thing, because what they did clever with that show is they took the Superman sort of story and characters and turned it into essentially a 90s romantic comedy at the time, because it kind of was. I mean, you look at Lois and Clark, and it was contemporary at the time, obviously, but it was a romantic comedy essentially, with those characters in, and it worked because it was very different to just doing a carbon copy of the Christopher Reeve films, many have tried to do. So it was fun.
I mean, it's hard with these shows. I don't know what people want really, because on one hand you get people complaining, well, I don't want a carbon copy of Christopher Reeve. You very much got that when Superman Returns came out. But there were people like me who were kind of thrilled and kind of, I really want a kind of natural continuation. So if the actor looks a bit like Christopher Reeve, I'm fine, I'm not worried. But equally, I'm not worried if the actor looks like Tyler Hoechlin or at the time looked like Dean Cain. I think what's going to make the difference for you is the tone and scripts of the show and the direction and all those kind of things. But it must be hard for the creators of this show to try and just navigate what bloody, us fanboys want.
Yeah. Well, it's like like you said, they're damned if they do and damned if they don't in some respects, because you do something like Superman Returns and people say, oh, it's trying to be an extension of the Christopher Reeve films, but it doesn't really make sense because they've contemporized it and it's all different actors and blah blah blah. And then you have Man of Steel, which absolutely tries to do something completely different with it, and then people are like, oh, I don't like it because it didn't feel like a Superman movie, and it was this, that, and the other. So it is a really hard line to walk. And one of the things that struck me straight away with this trailer, which I was pleased about, is the new costume, the new Superman costume, which, let's be honest, that's part of the character, it's part of the iconography. The new costume is much better than the version of the costume that he had in the Supergirl series when it was launched, in my opinion. I always thought the one in Supergirl looked a bit hokey, whereas this one, to be fair, looks a little bit more like the like the Man of Steel type costume, doesn't it? It looks a bit it's gone with that
and things like that.
And stuff.
I mean, again, the costumes are a very tough thing to get right because they can. I mean, I know everyone.
No pants.
But I just don't know what. When they got rid of the trunks in the comics back when they did the New 52, and Grant Morrison did his Action Comics run, people went ballistic. They were just like, what are you doing? Put the trunks back on that man. And I kind of get it. It's so much of the iconography. I mean, people don't quite get as drastically upset as we go through changes in, say, Batman's costume or things like that. But with Superman, I think because it is such an American icon, and because it is so much part of the visual culture of America, like, people go mad. People go absolutely nuts. I mean, I have my own preferences. I like the more traditional costume. I actually really like the Superman Returns costume. I thought that was really good.
Well, it was a good, I mean, it was kind of that mid, for me. And again, it depends on the era of the comics as well, because Christopher Reeve literally looked like it was the page of the comic that had come to life.
Sure.
He absolutely, that was the comics as they were then in the sort of late 70s, early 80s or whatever, that version of the comics. Whereas obviously you look at like Henry Cavill, who I think makes an excellent Superman, by the way. But, with his costume and his looks, he looks like kind of like the Alex Ross type artwork, right? If I got that right, I might have got the illustrator wrong, but he's got that.
I think in terms of physical looks, I actually think Tyler Hoechlin is actually quite close to Alex Ross's physical Superman in the face and things like that. And I think like the guy that probably comes closest for me in terms of actors is probably someone like John Hamm.
Okay, interesting.
You know what I mean? Like the jaw and everything like that. That looks like Superman to me, and I just don't know to this day why he's never ever been approached. I mean, maybe he has, and he's turned it down, but I just don't know to this day why he's never been approached. I mean, again, not knocking Tyler Hoechlin, and like he looks like a great Superman. I've only seen 1 or 2 episodes with him in, so I can't really make any judgment about what he's like in the role. But he looks great in this, and I really like the kind of interaction between him and Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois Lane. I think she's got that spark that Lois Lane needs. And I always remember Donna describing Margot Kidder as a klutz who basically would fall into a room because she was so clumsy. And I think Elizabeth Tulloch has got that, but at the same time, you see the kind of mind working, you see how kind of sharp she is. So I think she's going to be terrific. And looking at those two trailers, I'm really excited for the show.
Yeah, no, I am as well, most definitely. You know, I wasn't when Crisis on Infinite Earths came. I think they kind of hinted that it was kind of a setup for this, and I'll be honest, I kind of was like, oh, here we go again. Yeah, you know, another iteration of this. You know, is it will it work? Is it tired? Is it got old? You know, sort of thing. But both trailers have completely intrigued me and sold me on this because, like you said, I like the visual style they've gone with, which is a departure. But I think that if they stick the landing and they don't make it, of course we're going to have science fiction elements in it. You can even see in the trailer there's some villain that's holding Clark like a rag doll at one point and all of this sort of stuff. But the focus on the family, on the dynamic, on the you know the fact that it looks like he and Lois may have marital let me put my teeth back in. Him and Lois may have marital problems, you know, within it as well. And I think that's kind of grounding and relatable and potentially quite a fascinating aspect of this that hasn't really been explored on screen so far. So why not?
Yeah, and there is an element of that in things like the Lois Lane comic that's just been out recently by Greg Rucka and Mike Perkins, which was a terrific book. It was only 12 issues, but that was perfect. It was one continuous sort of novel-length storyline that does center a lot around their marriage, but also push Superman to a supporting character, you know, to give Lois Lane that room to kind of do what she does. And it is kind of about journalism in the modern era, and it's a really good series, and that's definitely worth checking out. There is one comic I do want to talk about in this, because with the children, is it just one kid they've got?
No, they have two, two teenage boys, which is what is a little bit confusing about the sort of whole timeline thing, and why I think they've used Crisis on Infinite Earths to get around this, because you're like suddenly like where they sort of met in one of the Supergirl shows, and now they've got teenage boys. What, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. So I think the timeline changed, but what I'm not, because I don't want to spoil it, so I've not sort of read up too much on this because I want to enjoy it when I see it. But what I'm intrigued to find out is whether one of the teenagers possesses the super power, the super abilities, and one doesn't. Because that, if that's the case, that could be another really fascinating family dynamic. You know, for teenagers, you've got one that you know has this immeasurable power and you know won't get sick and won't die and all of this sort of thing, you know, and then the other is immortal, you know, sorry, not immortal, amortal, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's just human. And I think I don't know if they're going to play on that. No doubt there's people screaming at the stream already that know the answer to this, that have read up on it or maybe even seen it. But I don't know. But I think that could be interesting. But yes, to answer your question, there's definitely two teenage boys that they have in this show. Yeah,
and that's interesting. I mean, one of the things, first off, I mean, going back to Smallville fascinates me because in thematic terms, because the one thing about Superman is he can never go home again, really, because Krypton's gone. So it's fascinating that in this they bring it back to his kind of spiritual home, if not his actual one, which is Smallville. So that's an interesting kind of thematic road to take. With the children, the first thing I thought of, now that there's a beautiful comic, one of the most beautiful comics I've ever read in my life, and I sincerely mean this. I know it's you don't always get people talking about superhero comics in this way, but there's a beautiful comic by a writer called Kurt Busiek and an artist called Stuart Immonen, called Superman Secret Identity, which is a kind of Elseworlds tale almost, but not. So it's about a kid who grows up in the Midwest or in Kansas, I believe, and his name is Clark Kent.
Right.
And in his world, Superman exists as a fictional character from DC Comics, with all the iconography that we have. So he spent all his life, he gets to sort of his teen years, he spent all his life hating the Superman character because he's called Clark Kent. His family constantly get him Superman gifts, little Superman figures.
Sounds great.
Yeah, he wants to be a writer, but he hates Superman.
Right.
Then one night he goes off camping on his own, and he goes to sleep in his tent. And when he wakes up, he's flying. And as the story progresses, he finds out that he gets all of Superman's powers. So what do you do when you've got all of Superman's powers? You become Superman. And he chooses to put on the costume and do what Superman does. And he slowly kind of attracts the attention of the government because they want to kind of use him as a weapon, and he very much refutes that. He kind of is like, well, I'll help you, but I'm not gonna be a tool of the government, but I'll help when you need me to. And he marries a girl not called Lois Lane, but near enough, because people keep trying to fix him up with women called Lois, because it's all just one big joke. But of course, he actually is Superman. But as the story progresses, and sorry to kind of spoil bits of this for you and for the listeners, he follows him through the different stages of his life. He grows into adulthood. He has children.
Right.
He has 2 girls. And there's a beautiful scene where, as he's getting older, the powers are starting to wane. So he's not like our Superman, like his powers are starting to fail as he gets old. And there's a scene where he's basically trying to fight off a tornado. Loads of people are going to die. There's this huge storm, and he knows that he's not strong enough to stop it. And all of a sudden, the storm kind of just spins itself out. And he says, as the storm goes away, I think I hear laughter, like women's laughter. And he realizes at that moment that his daughters have got the powers too. And I swear to God, I read that comic. I read that moment, and just it's like a single line, and it says, "For a moment, I hear laughter."
Right.
And I burst into tears. Like, it's just this amazing comic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think you can get it anymore.
Okay.
I think it's been unavailable for a long time, and it's been out of print. But if you can track it down, it was 4 sort of prestige format issues. Folks out there, if you can track it down, go read that. And I when I saw the 2 kids, and you see that scene where he kind of reveals the fact that he's Superman, the first thing I went to was, I wonder if in some way they're going to bring in elements from Secret Identity. Because I would love it if they did that. It's a great comic, and it's something I'd love to see on screen. But because of the Elseworlds nature of it, previously it hasn't been possible. But now it's like, oh, actually, yeah, you can kind of integrate that into the universe. But yeah, that was the first thing I thought when I watched that trailer. It was like, oh yeah, great, they're going to do, or the John Kent stuff, which is he has a child at the moment in the comics who's been sort of traveling in space with his grandfather, so Superman's father, who actually turns up alive. I don't know why he's alive in the comics. I'm not that well read on them, but he's kind of gone off into space, and he's also joined the Legion, the sort of Legion of superheroes from the think they're from the 31st century, so he kind of time travels as well. So they could do John Kent. They could be doing that. But I don't know. It's all kind of to play for, really, until we see it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think there's an opportunity here because presumably if he's moving back to Smallville, then, you know, Lana, I believe there's a version of Lana Lang in this as well, right, which is obviously a previous girlfriend or childhood sweetheart or whatever. That could potentially be something that could cause, you know, some sort of soap opera style friction in there. But, you know, obviously, you know, Smallville only took place mainly in Smallville. It did end up in Metropolis towards the end of its run, but you know, they kind of had the meteor shower that came from Krypton, which is basically how Kal-El's ship, you know, landed on Smallville. Was what caused a lot of you know, super gifted people. That became like the freak of the week type thing, you know, that he could battle against. And you know, whereas that was kind of fun, I always enjoyed the family drama stuff, more of the stuff with his mum and dad and Lex, and with Lex's dad, and obviously the love interest Lana Lang, and all of that sort of stuff. And of course they bring Lois into that as well eventually, played by Erica Durance, which was nice. But yeah, so you know, I think they've got an opportunity to. They've got to get that balance right. I mean, I don't know how many episodes this is going to be in a season, but you know, yes, there's going to be things threatening Earth, and Superman's going to have to deal with that, I guess. But also, you know, let's work on this family thing. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Superman Returns try and set up sort of Son of Superman?
Yeah,
it was one of the things that I really didn't think worked in the film, to be honest. Okay. But they were trying to set that up even back then, weren't they? So
I actually liked it in the film. Okay. But I'm the world's biggest Superman Returns apologist. So I think interestingly, I think the problem with Superman Returns for me is I did like sort of all of the homage to the Donner film, you know, right from using John Williams music to, you know, the Marlon Brando footage and the opening credits and all of that sort of stuff that they did. But my problem was that came out right in the middle of Smallville's run. And I was kind of much more invested in Tom Welling being Clark Kent than I ever was Brandon Rolfe, you know, and yeah, it just kind of didn't quite work for me. But you know, I think for me, I'm always, I don't mind different actors doing the role at the same time.
Sure. Which we've got now.
Yeah. Although I've got to say, initially when they announced like the Flash movie and all this kind of stuff, I was kind of very much, actually, you know what, you should maybe try and integrate your universe a bit better. But I don't know. Again, what do we want? It's always difficult. You know, fans make it difficult. I admit that I'm probably part of the problem in a way, because we have such high demands. You know, no, you never know what you really want though until it's given to you, right?
That's right. Yeah, no, exactly.
Until you get it.
Yeah, you know, I think this has potential. I don't know when it's going to show or where it's going to show in the UK in terms of.
So we should talk about that. It debuts 23rd of February on the CW channel in the US, and then on the next day, 24th of February, it's available on the CW app to stream for free if you have that. But that's only available to US and other territories. It's not available in the UK. I'm assuming that someone like Sky will pick this up.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it was weird with the Batwoman stuff when that came out, you know, a year or 2 years ago, whenever it was, because Sky here in the UK had all of the other Arrowverse shows. They were all on Sky One here, but the Batwoman show went on 5. Was it E4 or
E4,
yeah, E4? But that caused a big problem with the Crisis on Infinite Earth, because that involved crossovers of all of the shows. So it was a little bit of a mess, because you'd have things that weren't lining up because their schedules were different and whatever. So I ended up getting it on Home Media, obviously, as my name suggests. So I got the DVD release of it and watched it that way, which was great. But yeah, it's weird. It's a bit weird knowing where it's going to end up, and I don't believe we've got a confirmed UK date or distributor.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I really wish Netflix or Amazon would kind of swoop in and buy those shows, because there's also now DC Universe Infinite in the US, although I think a lot of the shows are moving from DC Universe to HBO Max now, which of course, again, we don't get. However, you do get some of the HBO stuff if you've got Sky. Wonder Woman 1984 was available about a month after it got released in the US, just stream for a payment. Which is something I'm against if you've already got a subscription service. I think if you've got the subscription service, you're already paying for it, and you shouldn't be paying this additional.
Yeah.
Or they need to bring the price of those down to a reasonable level. Not £15, not £20, as with Disney Plus's Mulan. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, I'm pretty sure I read that Disney's subscribers, Disney Plus's subscribers right now, are at something insane like 96 million. I mean,
which is really thanks to the Mandalorian in many respects. They're that's where there was a big peak in Disney Plus, was people wanted to subscribe to see that show,
And yeah, but I just, like, it's astounding. 96 million people paying for it, but you still want 20 quid for me to watch Mulan.
Oh, I know.
I don't think so.
No, that is ridiculous. And of course, we're going to have this problem as well on the DC side of things with HBO Max and whatever, because we've got the Snyder Cut coming out as well, haven't we? For Justice League, and I believe that that's also going to get a simultaneous home media release, so that you can pick it up on Blu-ray or whatever around the same time. I believe that's not confirmed, but I think that's happening.
I'm kind of similarly excited and trepidatious about that film. I really am. I don't know what to expect. I actually agree with his right to be able to do it, though, because if Ridley Scott's allowed to go out there and basically recut 70% of his output, I think you can let him have this one film. Do you know what I mean? But
I'm all for it. I'm intrigued to see it, because the released version. I know this is a whole nother thing and a whole nother argument, but the released version of Justice League was a bit of a hot mess, to be fair. Yeah. So it'll be good to see what it was supposed to be.
What we might do for the patrons of the Comic Crush is we might set up a nice round table with you, me, Nikki and Liz on to kind of give our views on that, because I think that would be an interesting kind of thing to get everyone on to. Obviously it'll be reviewed as normal, probably me and Liz or me and Nikki at some point, or even you and me, Keith. We'll see we'll see who's available when it comes around. But I think
I'm always happy to do it, that.
Yeah.
So,
just before we go, do you want to talk a bit about your Home Media Minefield channel and tell the audience about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So Home Media Minefield is a YouTube channel. And what it does is I look at physical media, so 4K, Blu-ray, and DVD mainly. And I do unboxings of collector's editions and things, and then reviews comparing the different types available, grading the picture, the audio, but also special features, commentaries, all of that sort of stuff, packaging, all of that fun stuff. So that's at Home Media Minefield. And then on Sundays we're actually doing a live stream called Let's See What's Out There Live. It's on the Home Media Minefield channel, and at the moment we have a panel discussing Marvel's WandaVision, but
Right.
I appreciate that you're doing that also, Paul, and we are going to have some crossover at some point.
In a different way, because obviously I think you've got Barbara, who is a kind of very up on the comics.
That's correct. Yeah, we it's a panel of 4, and it's myself, Pete Mealy, Ryan Holloway, and Barbara Mealy, who is really a big fan of those specific comics that WandaVision is based on.
Right.
So it's sort of great to get that side of things, as well. And I'm loving the show. It's kind of fun because it's a live stream. We get audience interaction as well. So if that's your thing, anybody out there watching that, it goes out on Sundays at 7:30 p.m. in the UK, and I don't think that clashes with you, does it?
No, actually, we're very much. So we do the Scarlet Watch, which is myself and Jordan, just talking about that week's WandaVision episode. So the show goes out on Fridays on Disney Plus. We're on Saturdays. We're usually up by about 7 o'clock, 7:30 Saturday evening. You can find us here on YouTube. But yeah, same subject matter, but different takes on. I suspect. In fact, for one of my early episodes, I read out your list of texts, which I love, when you first watched WandaVision, because
it won me over.
Again, although it was kind of fun, it wasn't mocking you. It was kind of, look, you can see how radically different people's opinions are and are going to be about this show. Because you weren't coming from a place of, I hate this. It was more, I've got no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell is this? I was literally like, what am I watching? And I wasn't, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure that first episode. I was thinking, I'm not sure.
I remember your messages,
and then of course, I got by episode 2, I was sucked in, and then that into it. That we just finished doing a show on the Mandalorian, and we thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity to keep the show going. But do it on WandaVision instead. So that's kind of where it came from. But yeah, I'm very much enjoying that as well. So I don't the superhero thing. I don't really sit in a DC or a Marvel camp. As far as I'm concerned, they've all got shows that are good, and they've all got shows that are naff, and you can just pick and choose.
It's very true, and that's the best way to look at it. But anyway, that show is on Sundays. Keith has videos on Home Media Minefield every Friday, which are the actual, the actual kind of main focus you show. And is it Mondays you do the unboxings?
Yeah, it's usually on Monday. We either do an unboxing or a explained video, and explained videos have been by popular demand because people have said to me, what's the difference between an aspect ratio and all this sort of thing, or what's region coding and all of this stuff. So I've tried to simplify it and explain it out there. And also I'm an actor and filmmaker as well. And if you want to see any of that work, it's at British Isles, which Isles is EYLES, as in my last name.
And Keith, this weekend, have you not got something going on? In fact,
yes.
So by the time you guys watch this would have kind of already happened. But do you want to tell people about what's happening?
Yeah, sure. A filmmaker friend of mine called Simon Aitken, who I used to host a podcast with called Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. He made a anthology film called Modern Love, which is going on Amazon Prime on Valentine's Day. I'm in one of the stories as well, so it's a little bit of a plug for me there as well. But he put a lot of effort into this film. It was made with practically zero budget. I've not seen it, so I'm intrigued myself this weekend to check it out. But that will be available on Amazon Prime, and I believe there's also going to be some interviews and things to follow as well, which again I'll put. If you go to @Home Media Minefield on the social medias, I will of course put links and all of that sort of stuff to that as well. So yeah,
but do give Keith's channel a check out, and do check out that movie over the weekend if you're at home.
Thanks,
well, I mean, we're all at home for Valentine's Day this year, so none of us are going out to restaurants. But if you want something to watch, it looks like a great movie. I'm really keen to watch it myself. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to Simon for making it. And, you know, congratulations on Home Media Minefield, because it's a great channel. I like it. I'm subscribed. You can catch Keith's videos. He's got a new one out today on the movie Somewhere in Time. You guys can check that out.
Starring Christopher Reeve.
Yes, yeah. It's all coming together. I'm back on Saturdays with Liz Jordan for the Scarlet Watch for the next few weeks until that show ends. We're then kind of looking at doing another show on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So that's in the planning stages now. You can find that. You can find loads of articles and podcasts on the comiccrush.com, which is my website. It's all about comics. It's a very carefully curated selection of comics every week. It's a comics magazine, if you like, just telling you all about the comics that you love. So I hope you'll check that out. Please do take a look at the Patreon, which is up above my head somewhere. Click on that, give that a look if you like, or purchase something from our web store, all of which helps keeps the show going and also helps keep the website going. Can't do it without you guys. So thank you very much for watching. Keith, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Paul.
And look forward to doing this again. We have got some more stuff coming up in the summer, definitely, and maybe another show quite soon we're chatting about at the moment. But yeah, plenty of stuff from us, guys. So we'll see you again soon. Catch you next time on The Crush. Bye-bye.
Bye.